The seeker asks, how can I live in total harmony with the Tao? The perfect man answers, do nothing. This seeming paradox is at the heart of Taoism. It almost annoys you to hear this answer, do nothing. But let us penetrate the heart of the mystic who is on the path of Wu Wei, of Taoism. This paradox is what Lao Tzu called Wu Wei. I am active continuously from my waking to my sleeping, yet I always feel that I have done nothing. Doing nothing means only one thing, that God is acting through you. He is the doer, the activator. You are the instrument who by free will allows the great Tao to flow through you to do the work. This allowing is what you do, the self-emptying and then the allowing of what is going to be expressed through the empty vessel. Not I, but God in me. Thou the all, I the nothing, as Jesus taught Catherine of Siena. These are the keys to selfless being, whereby the great God self abides in you always. Try it. Your life will become filled with the riches of the Spirit, with never a dull moment. Let God be the activator of cosmic good within you. The term Wu Wei is often translated as non-action, but it does not mean non-activity or passivity. Wu Wei means no action that is not rooted in the Tao. It is spontaneous action in harmony with the Tao, and not action that is calculated or premeditated. Lao Tzu taught, act without doing, work without effort. This has also been translated, act without action, do without ado. This is a perfect description of one of the most famous Taoists of all time, Winnie the Pooh. For those of you who are not familiar with Winnie the Pooh, he is a lovable, simple-minded bear who figures in the classic children's stories written by A.A. Milne, who is one of a cast of animal characters who live in the fantasy world of Christopher Robin. Author Benjamin Huff has written a book called The Tao of Pooh. He writes, when we learn to work with our own inner nature and with the natural laws operating around us, we reach the level of Wu Wei. Then we work with the natural order of things and operate on the principle of minimal effort. Since the natural world follows that principle, it does not make many mistakes. Mistakes are made or imagined by man, the creature with the overloaded brain who separates himself from the supporting network of natural laws by interfering and just simply trying too hard. Not like Pooh, the most effortless bear we've ever seen. Hoff records a dialogue he had with Pooh himself on this subject. Just how do you do it, Pooh? I asked. Do what? Asked Pooh. Become so effortless, I said. I don't do much of anything, he said. But all those things of yours get done. They just sort of happen, he said. Wait a minute. That reminds me of something from the Tao Te Ching, I said, reaching for a book. Here it is, chapter 37. Translated, it reads something like, Tao does not do, but nothing is not done. That sounds like a riddle, said Pooh. It means that Tao doesn't force or interfere with things, but lets them work in their own way to produce results naturally. Then whatever needs to be done is done. I see, said Pooh. I explained. In Chinese, the principle would be wei wu wei, do without doing. From wei wu wei comes the phrase self-so. That means that things happen by themselves, spontaneously. Oh, I see, said Pooh. Hoff continues. If you're getting more and more angry about all of this denial of doing anything, hang on. For a basic example of the Pooh way, let's recall something that happened in the book, The House at Pooh Corner, when Pooh, Piglet, Rabbit, and Roo were playing Pooh sticks. They dropped their sticks off the bridge into the river and had gone to the other side to see whose stick would come out first. And they'd been waiting quite a while when out floated Eeyore the donkey. I didn't know you were playing, said Roo, the kangaroo. I'm not, said Eeyore. Eeyore, what are you doing there, said Rabbit. Eeyore replied, I'll give you 3 guesses, Rabbit. Digging holes in the ground? Wrong. Leaping from branch to branch of a young oak tree? Wrong. Waiting for somebody to help me out of the river? Right. Give Rabbit time and he'll get the answer. Then Pooh got an idea. They could drop some stones into the river. The stones would make waves, and the waves would wash Eeyore over to the riverbank. Rabbit thought it was a good idea. Eeyore didn't. Supposing we hit him by mistake, said Piglet anxiously. Or supposing you missed him by mistake, said Eeyore. Think of all the possibilities, Piglet, before you settle down to enjoy yourselves. But Pooh had got the biggest stone he could carry and was leaning over the bridge, holding it in his paws. I'm not throwing it, I'm dropping it, Eeyore, he explained. And then I can't miss. I can't hit you. Could you stop turning around for a moment, because it muddles me rather? No, said Eeyore, I like turning round. Rabbit began to feel that it was time he took command. Now, Pooh, he said, when I say now, you can drop it. Are you ready, Pooh? Piglet, give Pooh a little more room. Get back a bit there, Roo. Now, said Rabbit. Pooh dropped his stone. There was a loud splash, and Eeyore disappeared. It was an anxious moment for the watchers on the bridge. They looked, and then, just as Pooh was beginning to think that he must have chosen the wrong stone or the wrong river or the wrong day for his idea, something gray showed for a moment by the riverbank, and it got slowly bigger and bigger, and at last it was Eeyore coming out. With a shout, they rushed off the bridge and pushed and pulled at him, and soon he was standing among them again on dry land. Oh, Eeyore, you are wet, said Piglet, feeling him. Eeyore shook himself and asked somebody to explain to Piglet what happened when you had been inside a river for quite a long time. Well done, Pooh, said Rabbit kindly. That was a good idea of ours. That's the end of the quote from House at Pooh Corner. Hoff comments on the wisdom of Pooh. Cleverness, as usual, takes all the credit it possibly can. But it's not the clever mind that's responsible when things work out. It's the mind that sees what's in front of it and follows the nature of things. When you work with Wu Wei, you put the round peg in the round hole and the square peg in the square hole. No stress, no struggle. Egotistical desire tries to force the round peg into the square hole and the square peg into the round hole. Cleverness tries to devise craftier ways of making pegs fit where they don't belong. Knowledge tries to figure out why round pegs fit round holes but not square holes. Wu Wei doesn't try. It doesn't think about it. It just does it. And when it does, it doesn't appear to do much of anything, but things get done. The back cover of the Tao of Pooh sums it all up. While Eeyore frets and Piglet hesitates and Rabbit calculates, Pooh just is. Thomas Merton once wrote, "The true character of Wu Wei is not mere inactivity, but perfect action." It is action not carried out independently of heaven and earth, and not in conflict with the dynamism of the whole, but in perfect harmony with the whole. The way I see this is perfect action is when what you are or what you do merges precisely with your Holy Christ self. And so the action and you disappear, but the effect and the manifestation remains. It's like the idea of the sunbeam slipping into the shining sea. When we reach that place where we have merged with the Christ self in our action, then we have no action, because we are the vessel and all of the Christ is working through us, but we have become that Christ. So the Holy Christ self, the real self, is the measure of perfect action or perfect inaction, whichever you want to call it. Raymond Blakeney said that the man who lives by Wu Wei is still, quiet, and passive, so that the Tao may act through him without hindrance. It all boils down to let go and let God. As Blakeney says, let God be God in you. Author Henry Burrell said that Lao Tzu did not mean that Wu Wei is mere idling with closed eyes. He meant relaxation from earthly activity, from desire, from the craving for unreal things. Think about ourselves when we crave things of this world, and when we have them, they either disintegrate, or we eat them and they're not good for us, or all kinds of things that we really go after. When we get them, they seem to simply disintegrate. They are nothing. All of this desiring for nothing. That is why he is talking about relaxation from desire and from the craving for unreal things. As long as you crave things in this world, there's no room in your life for Wu Wei. Because there is this energy of a sense of incompleteness. If I don't get this thing, if I don't do this thing, if I don't have this thing, whatever it is, I won't be happy. That state of consciousness is far, far away from that merging with a Holy Christ self. Lao Tzu did advocate activity in real things. He implied a powerful movement of the soul. He meant a yielding to the inner motive force which we derive from Tao, from our great causal body and I am presence, and which leads us to Tao again. The perfect man has fully perfected a life of Wu Wei. You could say he is in the unitive stage of the mystic path, fully one with the Tao. It is not he who acts, but the Tao that acts through him. That which acts through you is you. If you allow evil to act through you, you are in that moment evil. Cause and effect are one. If you allow the Tao to act through you, you are in that moment the Tao. And as you experience it, it becomes the natural way, the true return to the natural way of life. As the Apostle Paul said, I live, yet not I, but Christ liveth in me. And so he could say at the same time, I live, but I don't live, because it's no longer the old me. Christ liveth in me. I also find a parallel to Wu Wei in the work of the 13th century Christian mystic, Meister Eckhart. In his words, you can hear the teaching of Lao Tzu on forgetting the self and cultivating virtue. Eckhart said, "When one can do the works of virtue without willing to do them, and bring to completion some great and righteous matter without giving it a thought, when the deed of virtue seems to happen by itself simply because one loved goodness and for no other reason, then one is perfectly virtuous, and not before." Let us learn self-forgetting until we call nothing more our own. The storms of unrest come of self-will. We should commit ourselves and all our minds to the complete undoing of the human will, to desire only that we may fall in with the good and loving will of God. End of quote by Meister Eckhart. In the Garden of Gethsemane, which represents to each of us our ultimate trial in each embodiment, Jesus prayed to the Father, "Not my will, but thine be done." Houston Smith gives an excellent summary of Wu Wei in his book, The World's Religions. He writes, "The object of Taoism is to align one's daily life with the Tao. Align your daily life with your great causal body, in which you will find all of the great creations of your soul of all past ages. Align one's daily life to the Tao, ride its boundless tide, and delight in its flow. The basic way to do this is to perfect a life of Wu Wei." Wu Wei should not be translated as do-nothingness or inaction, for those words suggest a vacant attitude of idleness or abstention, more like absenteeism. Better renderings are pure effectiveness and creative quietude. Wu Wei is the supreme action, the precious suppleness, simplicity, and freedom that flows from us, or rather through us, when our private egos and conscious efforts yield to a power not their own. Taoism's approach is, get the foundations of the self in tune with Tao and let behavior flow spontaneously. The Tao Te Ching makes this point without wasting a word. The way to do, it says, is to be. To be all that you are, to be who you are in God, in your real self, in your soul. To be. One simply lets the Tao flow in and flow out again, until all life becomes a dance in which there is neither feverishness nor imbalance. Wu Wei is a life lived above tension. Far from inaction, however, it is a kind of pure effectiveness in which no motion is wasted on bickering or outward show. The person who embodies Wu Wei acts without strain, persuades without argument, is eloquent without flourish, and achieves results without violence, coercion, or pressure. Though the agent may be scarcely noticed, his or her influence is in fact decisive. Lao Tzu said that the sage ruler should govern by Wu Wei. He should allow all people the freedom to develop according to their own inner nature. Thus he and his government should be unpretentious, non-assertive, and non-aggressive. Zhuangzi said, "When the sage governs, he makes absolutely certain that all creatures can do what they are supposed to do. That is all." As we can tell, that is a lot. Yet Gene Cooper notes that Wu Wei is in no way the equivalent of anarchy, since it is based on the qualities of the sage ruler. It is not a carte blanche for license, but a call to live in a natural and an unsophisticated way. According to Lao Tzu, the reason this method of government works is that the ruler, by the power of the Tao within him, can magnetize others to the Tao. When he does this, then they too shall become children of the Tao. The Tao Te Ching says, if lords and kings could center themselves in the Tao, the whole world would be transformed by itself. The best ruler completes his tasks and finishes his affairs, yet the common people say, these things all happen by nature. The sage says, I do nothing, and the people of themselves are transformed. The sage's ability to accomplish the great, said Lao Tzu, comes from his not playing the role of the great. Ruling a big country is like cooking a small fish. What does cooking a small fish require? The cook must have a delicate touch and must not handle the fish too much, or it will break apart. You could compare Lao Tzu's philosophy of Wu Wei to the Montessori method of education. Maria Montessori was an educator and the first woman medical doctor in Italy. She gained worldwide fame in the early 20th century for her discoveries about the development of young children. Dr. Montessori showed that children will learn naturally when they are in a prepared environment suited to their abilities and interests. Like Lao Tzu's ruler, the teacher helps the child only when he needs it and does not put him into a mold. The teacher allows his students to unfold their abilities naturally. Dr. Montessori wrote, the teacher's intervention in the marvelous process of the unfoldment of the child is indirect. We are here to offer to this life the means necessary for its development, and having done that, we must await this development with respect. She said these methods of education tend to guard that spiritual fire within man, to keep his real nature unspoiled, and to set it free from the oppressive and degrading yoke of society. Her disciple and friend, E.M. Standing, wrote, none of Dr. Montessori's ideas have been more misunderstood nor more widely abused than that of the non-intervention of the teacher, which is the complementary principle to that of the liberty of the child. The right path for the teacher to take lies not in giving no instruction at all, but in giving just enough, no more, the indispensable minimum, the perfect dose. To give less would mean that the teacher had abandoned the child. To give more would destroy his spontaneity and diminish his interest. Real charity is to succor those who have need of it without being discovered, or rather, it assumes the aspect not of an assistance given, but of a spontaneous and natural gesture. It is true that the Montessori directress will always have plenty to do in the way of instruction and guidance, but the ideal as well as the practice is that as time goes on, the child should become the ever more active partner and the teacher the more passive. In this connection, Dr. Montessori often quotes the words of John the Baptist, which he spoke referring to the Messiah. He must increase, but I must decrease. As Lao Tzu said, the sage's ability to accomplish the great comes from his not playing the role of the great. I said earlier, the sage is able to transform people simply by the power of his example and by the power of the Tao within. Dr. Montessori also recognized this. Once she was asked, "How do I teach religion to my child?" She answered, "You don't teach religion to children, you live it before them." Another way of practicing Wu Wei is to accept your destiny. to go wherever the Tao takes you. Practicing Wu Wei is accepting with equanimity whatever arrives at your doorstep. And thus it is written, whatever perfected people do, they embrace destiny and go along without confusion. Calamity, fortune, profit, and harm cannot trouble their minds. Translator Arthur Waley wrote, to be in harmony with, not in rebellion against, the fundamental laws of the universe is the first step on the way of the Tao. Another way of saying this would be, take accountability for your karma. Don't rebel against your karma. Don't be a karma dodger or a karma Yankee. Confront your destiny and master it. The perfect man does not complain about hardship. He sees an inner meaning in everything that happens to him. He is also free from fear. He doesn't tie up his energy worrying about what might happen if such and such a thing were to occur. Zhuangzi said, the sage is happy under prosperous and adverse circumstances alike. Nothing can harm him. He takes things as they come and is not overwhelmed. To understand that hardship is a matter of fate, that is karma, that success is a matter of the times, and to face great difficulty without fear. This is the courage of the sage. The Taoist master Lietze also taught this precept. Cooper writes, Lietze gives the delightful allegory of the poor old man who lived with his son in a ruined fort at the top of a hill. He owned a horse which strayed off one day, whereupon the neighbors came to offer sympathy at his loss. What makes you suppose that this is misfortune? The old man asked. Later the horse returned, accompanied by several wild horses. This time the neighbors came to congratulate him on his good luck. What makes you think this is good luck? He inquired. Having a number of horses now available, the son took to riding, and as a result, broke his leg. Once more the neighbors rallied round to express sympathy, and once again the old man asked, what makes you think this is misfortune? The next year war broke out, and because his son was lame, he was exempt from going to the war. What is the moral of the story? We should be grateful for whatever befalls us. There is always a hidden blessing or something to be learned from every situation. God gave the 14th century Christian mystic Henry Zhuzo a lesson on Wu Wei that could have come right out of the Taoist text. Zhuzo had a mystical experience in which a young man took him to an advanced school of learning. The man told him, an angel no doubt, the teaching that is lectured on in this school is nothing other than complete and perfect detachment from oneself, so that a person becomes so utterly nothing, no matter how God treats him, either in joy or sorrow. He strives continually to be in the state of going away from his self, and he aims alone at God's praise and honor, just as dear Christ did. This art requires that one be free for inactivity. The less one does, the more one has really accomplished. This is precisely Lao Tzu's teaching on Wu Wei. The sage never strives for the great, and thereby the great is achieved. The Tao never does anything, yet through it all things are done. Zhuzo's biographer defined being free for inactivity as not engaging in activities which are an obstacle to one's spiritual progress, but acting purely in praise of God. Here is an anecdote by Zhuangzi that illustrates how the perfect man practices Wu Wei by accepting his destiny. All at once the Master Yu fell ill. Master Si went to see how he was. Amazing, said Master Yu. It's amazing it can come out of my mouth, right? See how many more times? It's a funny story besides. Okay, don't laugh and then I won't laugh. Amazing, said Master Yu. Okay, I'm not going to say any more. Okay, turn around. Amazing, said the Master. I think I've been delivering lectures too long. Okay, now no more laughing. The Creator is making me all crookedy like this. My back sticks up like a hunchback, and my vital organs are on top of me. My chin is hidden in my navel, my shoulders are up above my head, and my pigtail points at the sky. It must be some dislocation of the yin and yang. Yet he seemed calm at heart and unconcerned. Dragging himself haltingly to the well, he looked at his reflection and said, my, so the Creator is making me all crookedy like this. Do you resent it? Asked Master Si. Why, no, what would I resent? The Master answered. If the process continues, perhaps in time he'll transform my left arm into a rooster. In that case, I'll keep watch on the night. Or perhaps in time he'll transform my right arm into a crossbow pellet, and I'll shoot down an owl for roasting. I received life because the time had come. I will lose it because the order of things passes on. Be content with this time and dwell in this order, and then sorrow cannot touch you. In ancient times, this was called the freeing of the bound. There are those who cannot free themselves because they are bound by things. But nothing can ever win against heaven. That's the way it's always been. What would I have to resent? Really, the wisdom of China is the incomparable wisdom, because it always sees the other side of things. As you can see from these stories of Zhuangzi, the way of Tao is a way of joy and laughter. The man who lives in harmony with the Tao is naturally joyful. I think this joy comes from the sense of having finally found the inner key. And this key is surely found in Taoism. And when we understand it truly, we understand all the great avatars more profoundly. I've said this before. I never truly understand at this level the teachings of Jesus Christ or the scriptures until I went through the giving of all of these lectures on the Tao. This Taoist approach to life is portrayed in a Chinese legend about the founders of the three great religions of China. Confucius, Gautama Buddha, and Lao Tzu were all standing around a vat of vinegar, the symbol of life. Each put their finger into the vat to taste the vinegar. Confucius found it sour. He believed that man in his day was out of sync with the ideals of the ancient sages, and that these ideals should be restored through regulated moral behavior. Gautama, who believed that life is suffering until all inordinate desires are transcended, found the vinegar bitter. But when Lao Tzu tasted the vinegar, he smiled and said it was sweet. Why? Because Taoists believe you can find joy today when you live in harmony with the Tao. Zhuangzi said, "To harmonize with men is called human joy. To harmonize with heaven is called heavenly joy. The mountains and forests, the hills and fields fill us with overflowing delight, and we are joyful. Our joy is not ended when grief comes rushing in." Zhuangzi said that the difference between joy and sorrow is really just a matter of perspective. What the world values, he said, is money, reputation, long life, achievement. What it counts as joy is health and comfort of body, good food, fine clothes, beautiful things to look at, pleasant music to listen to. If people find that they are deprived of these things, they go into a panic or fall into despair. They are so concerned for their life that their anxiety makes life unbearable, even when they have the things they think they want. Their very concern for enjoyment makes them unhappy. The rich make life intolerable, driving themselves in order to get more and more money, which they cannot really use. In so doing, they are alienated from themselves and exhaust themselves in their own service, as though they were the slaves of others. The world can't decide what is right and what is wrong. And yet, in action, Wu Wei can decide this. Perfect happiness and well-being. Only Wu Wei gets you close to this. My opinion, said Zhuangzi, is that you never find happiness until you stop looking for it. In other words, joy in the heart is not something you strive for. Joy is something you become by riding the tide of the great Tao. Taoists say that Wu Wei is the foundation for all creativity. Houston Smith calls Wu Wei creative quietude. Creative quietude. Creative quietude, he writes, combines within a single individual two seemingly incompatible conditions: supreme activity and supreme relaxation. One way to create is through following the calculated directives of the conscious mind. The results of this mode of action, however, are seldom impressive. They tend to smack more of sorting and arranging than of inspiration. Genuine creation, as every artist knows, comes when the more abundant resources of the subliminal self are somehow tapped. But for this to happen, a certain disassociation from the surface self has to happen. This is what is needed. The conscious mind must relax, stop standing in its own light, let go. Only so is it possible to break through the law of reversed effort, in which the more we try, the more our efforts boomerang. Zhuangzi illustrated how Wu Wei is creative quietude in this anecdote about Qing, the chief carpenter. You'll like this story. Qing, the chief carpenter, was carving wood into a stand for hanging musical instruments. When finished, the work appeared to those who saw it as though of supernatural execution. And the Prince of Lu asked him, "What mystery is there in your art?" "No mystery, Your Highness," replied Qing. "And yet there is something. When I am about to make such a stand, I guard against any diminution of my vital power. I first reduce my mind to absolute quiescence. 3 days in this condition, and I become oblivious of any reward to be gained. 5 days, and I become oblivious of any fame to be acquired. 7 days, and I become unconscious of my 4 limbs and my physical frame. Then, with no thought of the court present in my mind, my skill becomes concentrated, and all disturbing elements from without are gone. I enter some mountain forest. I search for a suitable tree. I find it. It contains the form required, which is afterwards elaborated. I see the stand in my mind's eye, and then set to work. Otherwise, there is nothing. I bring my own natural capacity into relation with that of the wood. What was suspected to be of supernatural execution in my work was due solely to this. That gives us much to think about, doesn't it? And thus it is written, perfected people are successful in whatever they undertake and arrive wherever they go. I would like to comment on the point of the conserving of his natural energy, of his chi. Each one of us has chi, and it is centered in the seat of the soul chakra, between the navel and the base of the spine. That is the center of energy, which is taught in martial arts. The seat of the soul chakra governs reproduction. It is near the kidneys and near the bladder. If you would conserve your chi, you need to remember that chi is fire, that you reduce this fire or put it out when you are continually drinking ice water, soft drinks with ice, iced beverages, cold foods, or even just consuming an inordinate amount of liquids. This is something to remember, because the chi is the power that we release that comes both from the base of the spine chakra, the power of the mother, and from our I Am Presence and from our Holy Christ Self. It is centered in the soul, and the soul needs this energy. The soul needs that energy for everything she has to do in this life, including the weaving of the deathless solar body. So let us not deprive ourselves of a major source of energy that is physical in the physical body by ignoring the laws of yin and yang in our diet. In the introduction of his compilation of the works of Zhuang-Tzu, Thomas Merton explained the story of the woodcarver. We see that the accomplished craftsman does not simply proceed according to certain fixed rules and external standards. To do so, of course, is perfectly all right for the mediocre artisan. But the superior work of art proceeds from a hidden and spiritual principle. In fasting, detachment, forgetfulness of results, and abandonment of all hope of profit, the woodcarver discovers precisely the tree that is waiting to have this particular work carved from it. In such a case, the artist works as though passively, and it is Tao that works in and through him. Taoist sages taught that oneness with the Tao through Wu Wei renders the perfect man invulnerable. Invulnerable. You are at the very center of the great Tao. You are at the point of equilibrium of yin and yang forces. That is why you are invulnerable, and that is the definition of the perfect man, the Holy Christ Self. The Tao Te Ching says, if you are one with the Tao to the end of your days, you will suffer no harm. And thus it is written, the perfect man could ascend the loftiest heights without fear, could enter the water and not get wet, could enter the fire and not get burned. This statement can be taken literally. Some adepts have attained spiritual powers that protect them from physical harm. But these words are also a metaphor. The perfect man enters into and accepts every experience that comes his way. His inner tranquility renders him invulnerable to the so-called arrows of outrageous fortune. He has surrendered his own desires and goes wherever the Tao takes him. Stephen Mitchell captures the essence of this concept in his unique translation of this passage from chapter 63 of the Tao Te Ching. When the master runs into a difficulty, he stops and gives himself to it. He doesn't cling to his own comfort. Thus, problems are no problem for him. This is how the master can enter the water and not get wet, can enter the fire and not get burned. Zhuangzi explained how the perfect man attains invulnerability. He wrote, Confucius was seeing the sights at Luliang, where the water falls from a height of 30 fathoms and races and boils along for 13 miles, so swift that no fish or other water creature can swim in it. He saw a man dive into the water, and supposing that the man was in some kind of trouble and intended to end his life, he ordered his disciples to line up on the bank and pull the man out. But after the man had gone a couple of 100 paces, he came out of the water and began strolling along the base of the embankment, his hair streaming down, singing a song. Confucius ran after him and said, At first I thought you were a ghost, but now I see you're a man. May I ask if you have some special way of staying afloat in the water? The man replied, I have no way. I began with what I used to do, grew up with my nature, and let things come to completion with fate. I go under the swirls and come out with the eddies, following along the way the water goes, and never thinking about myself. That's how I can stay afloat. The man so harmonized himself with the rhythm of the forces of nature that he literally became one with them. Lietzer once said, I am blowing away east and west as a dry leaf torn from a tree. I cannot even make out whether the wind is riding on me or I am riding on the wind. The one who practices Wu Wei and becomes more and more infilled with the Tao is becoming an immortal. This is the belief of Taoists. Summarizing Lao Tzu's teaching, Ellen Chun says, one who identifies his individual life with the universal life of Tao is as long living as the everlasting Tao. Want to write that down? One who identifies his life with the universal life of Tao is as long living as the everlasting Tao. One text says, the body only comes to life when it receives the Tao. We only have life when we contact the presence of God with us. The body only dies when it loses the Tao. Whoever is able to preserve and guard the Tao will live forever and never perish. The Tao Te Ching says, what is contrary to the Tao will come to an early end. One who does not lose his place with Tao lasts long. One who dies without perishing has longevity. One who doesn't die when his body passes on. Because of his cryptic style, no one is sure if Lao Tzu really believed in physical or spiritual immortality. Later Taoists developed their own concepts of immortality. The goal of those who believed in physical immortality was to change the heavy substance of the body into the substance that was light pure, and long-lasting. In some cases, this search for physical immortality became an obsession. Some people actually tried to find an elixir or pill that would make them immortal. One Taoist is said to have taken a pill and ascended to the heavens. In his elation, he dropped his jar of pills. And when his dogs and hens ate them, they promptly followed after him into heaven. Among the Taoists that believed in spiritual immortality was a sect that originated in the 4th century AD known as Shangqing Taoism. They thought that the goal of life is the ascension. Livia Cohn writes, "This is a key idea of all mystical literature of later ages. The ultimate aim of mystical practice is the attainment of a position in the heavens or paradises of the immortals. This attainment is reached when the bounded physical body that the spirit inhabited on this earth is discarded, either naturally at the end of a fulfilled lifespan or intentionally upon receiving a summons from above." We have been considering in our lectures on mysticism of the world's religions how all mystics ultimately come to the same conclusion because they began at the same beginning. John Blofeld writes that among Taoists, becoming an immortal has always been virtually synonymous with becoming a sage or perfect man. An immortal, he said, is one who, by employing to the full all his endowments of body and mind, by shedding passion and eradicating all but the simplest and most harmless desires, has attained to free, spontaneous existence, a being so nearly perfect that his body is but a husk or receptacle of pure spirit. He has undergone a spiritual rebirth, broken free from the shackles of illusory selfhood, and come face to face with his true self. He is aware that his true self is not his personal possession, but is none other than the sublime, undifferentiated Tao. With the vanishing of his human ego, he sees himself no longer as an individual, but as the unchanging Tao embodied in form. Death, when it comes, will be for him no more than the casting off of a worn-out robe. The perfect man who walks the earth one with the Tao is in essence already immortal. Already immortal. When do you become immortal? Only God knows. Right now, when you're walking the earth, one day, something will change in you, and you will know that never again will you return to mortality. The perfect man has unlocked the mysteries of the great Tao. He leans on a pillar that is never shaken and travels a road that is never blocked. He is endowed from a resource that is never exhausted and learns from a teacher that never dies. Don't we all? He is successful in whatever he undertakes and embraces his destiny. He governs the inside and goes along without confusion. He focuses his attention internally and stands in the center of the quintessential. And if you ask the perfect man how you can do it too, he will tell you, guard the senses, apprentice yourself to an enlightened teacher, purify and strengthen your body, become empty, fast the mind and forget the self, become the master of stillness and contemplate the inner radiance. Do nothing, just be the Tao. This concludes my offering to you of the mysteries of the Tao.